This video, we're going to talk about photosynthesis. So again, photosynthesis occurs in this organelle called the chloroplast. What does it do? It takes carbon dioxide and water, two low energy reactants. It's going to use energy from sunlight to produce organic molecules, high energy organic molecules, and the waste product it's going to produce is oxygen gas. So again, this is the complementary or inverse relationship to cell respiration, where we take organic molecules and oxygen and produce carbon dioxide and water in the process of forming this molecule ATP. Okay, so let's look at the two steps involved in photosynthesis and how this occurs. So first off, we have the light reaction. So the first thing you need for photosynthesis is you need light, sunlight, as your energy source, your power. It's going to be absorbed by the chlorophyll molecules in this thing called these thylakoid membranes, which are found in this structure called the grana. Okay, so they're going to catch that energy, they're going to absorb it, and they're going to use that energy to do two things. First off, they're going to take water, and they need hydrogen to make carbohydrates, so they're going to strip the hydrogen and their high energy electrons off of the water, and they're going to get rid of the oxygen. So the first thing that happens is oxygen is going to be released, and the hydrogens are going to be carried by this carrier molecule called NADPH. So this is a lot like the NADH that's in cell respiration that carries electrons and hydrogens from the first two steps to the electron transport chain, except this time we're taking the hydrogen from water and we're going to carry it to the next step. We're also going to use some of that energy from sunlight to make the molecule ATP. ATP is again the energy source, and we're going to need that extra energy to make this high energy sugar molecule. Okay, so that's the light reaction, that's the first step. Now the second step is where carbon is fixed into sugar, and that occurs in this step called the Calvin cycle. So this process of carbon fixation means fixing carbon into an organic molecule, such as sugar. Okay, how does this happen? Well, we take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, we're going to use the energy from ATP, and we're going to use the hydrogens in this NADPH to combine with the carbon and hydrogens and energy, we can pack them together to make sugar. And we don't need to know all the details in this carbon cycle. It's fairly complicated. All you really need to know is that the ATP and the NADPH from the light reaction are going to provide the energy to fix carbon dioxide into sugar. And there you have the second step of photosynthesis, the Calvin cycle. Okay, and that's pretty much it for photosynthesis. Now, it's important to understand how photosynthesis and cell respiration relate to each other in terms of this whole process we call the carbon cycle. So we have a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and that's taken by plants and other photosynthetic organisms, bacteria and algae and so forth, and it's fixed into organic molecules in that carbon cycle, right? In that Calvin cycle, the second part of photosynthesis, and that process is part of this big process we just looked at called photosynthesis. So that's important in terms of taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And then plants are eaten by herbivores, and herbivores are eaten by carnivores, and some of these herbivores and carnivores die and are decomposed, and that decomposition gets converted back into carbon dioxide. And this whole cycles back through. And as these guys are running around and chasing each other and eating and so forth, they're also producing a lot of carbon dioxide through this process called cell respiration. So cell respiration is putting the carbon back into the atmosphere, and we have this nice balanced system. Photosynthesis is taking carbon dioxide out, cell respiration is putting it back in. But you may have heard recently that this carbon in the atmospheric carbon, has gotten out of balance. And the reason for that is something that humans are doing, which is over here. Guess what these question marks are? Yes, we are burning fossil fuels. So there are vast quantities of carbon that have been sequestered underground for millions of years, right, due to incomplete decay of plant material. And some of them have formed gas and oil and coal. And all those forms of carbon are high energy. We can extract them and we can burn them, and we can do a lot of good things with them, like make electricity and gasoline and diesel, and we can power all the things in our lives. That's really good, but when we burn them, that goes into the atmosphere, and that's going to increase the levels of carbon dioxide. So let's look at what we've done. This is basically data from 1960 to 2000, and you can see the carbon dioxide levels have consistently gone up. They go up and down depending on the season, but this trend line shows that a pretty steady increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide levels. This is actually old. Stops in 2000. Recently you may have heard that the atmospheric carbon levels just surpassed the 400 parts per million level. So now we're way over here. This graph doesn't even show where we are. Well, how does that relate to temperature? You can see that as carbon dioxide levels have gone up, that average temperatures have also increased, much more kind of randomly, not as nice a linear line as this, but there is definitely a relationship, and we have increased over 1 degree Celsius, and they now think we might be at this critical point where, because carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, we're going to accelerate that, and we could see from 3 to 5 degree increase in atmospheric temperatures. So what could that do? Well, in Louisiana, that could make it even hotter in the summer. That's no fun. But really, it's already hot here. We have air conditioning. We can deal with it. But it's a bigger deal in places like, graph just shows how carbon dioxide levels have increased, again, since 1900 to 2000. Again, the Industrial Revolution, we're putting more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and again, because it's greenhouse gas, that is affecting the climate. Okay? Well, in the Arctic area, that's a big problem because, again, Arctic areas are cold, number one, because they're at the North Pole. They don't get a lot of strong sun rays, but also snow and ice reflect about 80 to 90% of the sunlight that hits them. As that gets warmer and they start to melt, they turn into water and green land or brown soil, which absorbs about 90% of the sunlight and converts it into heat. So what we have going on is a positive feedback. As snow and ice start to melt from increasing global temperatures, that melts this white area and it becomes darker, and that absorbs more heat. So you can see what they're showing here is the melting of the polar ice, how it's occurred in the past and how it's continuing to occur. And that's a big problem for this guy, the polar bear, because they need Arctic ice to hunt seals. Without Arctic ice, they can't survive. They will go extinct. So in the Arctic area, this climate change, this change in Earth's average temperature is really profound, really causing severe problems because of this positive feedback of melting snow and ice. Another area where it's been really dramatic is in coral reefs. Coral reefs are, again, closer to the equator, but they're sort of considered the tropical rainforests of our marine ecosystems because they have such a wide amount of biodiversity. Well, what happens as water temperatures get too warm is some of these coral that require specific temperatures, they just can't survive in that warmer water. It's beyond their threshold for survival. Or in other areas, the increasing amount of carbon dioxide in the water causes, again, carbon dioxide dissolves in water and forms carbonic acid, and then the pH of the water goes down. Well, lower pHs, acids, tend to dissolve these bicarbonate shells of the corals and destroy and kill the corals. So corals are kind of the main producers of these ecosystems. So when they go, everything else kind of collapses on them. So two ecosystems that are really affected by climate change are the Arctic, again, due to the melting of snow and ice and this positive feedback that's started, and these coral reefs because of the sensitivity of the coral to warming waters and to acidic waters. So those are two things to talk about as they relate to this, again, this carbon cycle in which photosynthesis and cell respiration play an important role, but also humans and our burning of fossil fuels plays an important role as well. So that's it for this video.